What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and today this is part 4 of my reviewing and ranking Yes's live albums. I recently did their studio albums and was kind of surprised to discover how many live albums they had that I'd never heard of or never even listened to. I think I'd heard of them, but I had never checked them out. I had heard the first 3, Yes Shows, Yes Songs, 9012 Live, the solos. I reviewed those already on this channel, and I'm ranking them by how well I think they take the studio versions of Yes songs, which for the most part I think are fantastic, and translated them into the live. So like if they literally, like something like, what's a good song? Heart of the Sunrise early on. One of my top 10 songs live, probably not one of my top 10 songs studios, not going to do much for me live because they really don't mix it up all that much. So unless they're bringing something a little extra, if they just replicate the studio version, it's kind of a wash. So I'm going to talk about this album in brief, their 4th release, which is House of Yes, live from House of Blues. And then I'm going to rank the songs on this by how well I think the live version either subtracts from or adds to the studio version. And then when I'm done with this entire project, my goal is to have the top 10 live Yes performances that have been released on an album. So this is from 2000, from a show October 31st, 1999. I just did a Halloween show from Fish, the previous video, from 3 years earlier. It is almost the complete show. It is the complete show, at least as far as the sequencing of the songs, is the order the songs were played. They did not include a Close to the Edge, which was performed, and they did not include a Hearts from 90125. Other than that, the entire show is here. It is on 2 discs. It's about just under 2 hours without Close to the Edge and Hearts. And this is I think the only tour where they had 6 members, when it wasn't like the combination of the 2, with like former band members, like the double, the Rabin Howe trio thing. You get John Anderson on vocals, Steve Howe on guitar, Alan White on drums, Chris Squire on bass, backing vocals throughout. And then the 2 people that are normally not a part of Yes that are here for this live tour and this release, Billy Sherwood on guitars and backing vocals, and Igor Koroshev on keyboards. And so 6 people in a Yes band. And my overall sort of evaluation of this album is that I like the set list. I like some of the decisions that have been made. We do get 1, 2, everything that isn't from The Ladder, which is the album that they were on tour for when they recorded this album. This is The Ladder tour. Everything that is not on The Ladder is a brand new live release. Is not a brand new live release. It's been released before, except for Awaken, which we had yet to hear a live version of Awaken. We get a live version of Cinema, which we had yet to hear, and we get a live version of Owner of a Lonely Heart, which we had yet to hear. The stuff that we had heard before on Yes Songs or Yes Shows, we get a Yours Is No Disgrace, opens up. We get a Time and a Word, a little snippet of that. We get Perpetual Change, pretty good, but nowhere near as impressive or monstrous or as awesome as that Yes Songs version. We get a Ritual, only a snippet of that. We get an And You and I. We get I've Seen All Good People, and we get a Roundabout to close out. And then we get a handful of ladder tracks thrown in there. And I think the one takeaway I have of this album coming away from it, after having listened especially to Yes Shows and Yes Songs, is this doesn't sound like a rock band when it's live. I think the really great thing about those 2 70s releases in particular, and a little bit of the 902 Live the Solos, is it sounds like a rock band. It sounds like a 4-piece, a 5-piece, guy on vocals, just out there playing the songs and adding some energy to them and giving a rock show. Just happens to be really complicated prog rock songs. This feels a little more like a production. Like those 2 extra members kind of feel like their contributions are great. I think a lot of these songs sound kind of good. Not all of them. I think there are a couple songs that are weaker live than the studio versions, but it comes across, it doesn't have that, hey, we're out here, we're a band and we're playing these songs, that I think those earlier things have. I'm starting to feel sort of the Yes as a Machine type thing coming in, and everything feels a little more, even the improv sections feel a little more scripted and less spontaneous, even though I know in the 70s we knew those things were going to happen. If you listen to Yours Is No Disgrace, like, there's going to be an intro jam in like 72. There's going to be that great Steve Howe jam in the middle. But even though we knew those two things were happening, they all felt loose and freewheeling and had a little more of a spontaneous edge than this release. Yeah, I mean, I think that the latter stuff kind of hurts the momentum. I think the latter stuff sounds better on the studio versions. I think the clarity of the instruments, I think the arrangements, I think there's a little more heft to a couple of the songs. I really only think one of the latter songs sounds better. So those kind of hurt the flow of the album and I guess the flow of the show. So I'm kind of hot and cold on this one. There are some moments that I like, but I think this album pales quite a bit, especially to Yes songs and Yes shows. But as for the songs, I'm now going to go through the songs. There were 15 of them. I'm going to talk about each one of them briefly and rank them from 15 to 1 to how well I think the live version compares to the studio version. So let's start off the list. Number 15, Roundabout. I do not like this version, Roundabout. Starts off with the straight off, we start off with just right into the song, none of the acoustic intro. But when we get to that awesome middle section, that awesome proggy, little bit heavier, and then we get softer, and then we build back into the solos. When we get to that middle section, the band stops, and Anderson, I think it's Anderson, goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we go right into the solo section, which is a bummer because we missed that awesome middle section. We get the solo section, we finish out the song, and then there's still time left. There's like this pocket of time. So I'm like, oh, maybe they're just going to throw an awesome jam at the end. Well, they throw something in at the end, and I can't say it's awesome. It's something like John Anderson, it's this cheesy little vamp, and John Anderson starts singing something like, guess who's playing the House of Blues, or it's yes. Like, we all know who's playing the House of Blues, right? I mean, we either bought the album or bought the ticket, but it's just this cheesy sort of like, yeah, I think that's what he says. But he says something that's just like, they add these codas at the end of songs. Owner of a Lonely Heart had this like little coda that they had live. What was it? It Can Happen had this little coda that they had, this like uplifting John Anderson feel-good coda. This Roundabout coda, it just kills me. I think it's horrible. I think that's what he's saying. Guess who's playing the House of Blues? Or something like that. And it's cringy. It's not very good. Give me that middle section. That's what I want with my Roundabout. Can't say I really like it. Lightning Strikes. Don't really like the studio version, and I think this version just sounds way more chaotic and way more hectic. It's already kind of this weird, jumpy, bouncy song. The live version, you're missing some of the cleanliness of the production, and instead you just get this hectic, sort of crazy energy for a song that I don't think is that good. Face to Face is a little bit interesting in the studio. It has this weird darkness to it, and sort of the not typical sounding sort of production and rhythms that don't normally sound like a Yes song kind of work in the studio version because of the production and because of the darkness. Here, it all sounds a lot thinner. It just sounds a little more like unnecessarily complicated. It just like the song itself doesn't really, you realize the songwriting itself is kind of weak and you don't have the production there to maybe kind of save it. So Face to Face, I also don't think kind of works. Homeworld, the Ladder, is another one that I don't think really works. Another song that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I think it's just a little bit too thin on here, and it just kind of doesn't, I don't know, just something doesn't work about it. So those three Ladder songs, for me, I prefer the studio versions over the live versions. Then we get The Messenger. And The Messenger kind of works. It's a song about Bob Marley. And Anderson even says in the beginning, like, hey, this is a song about Bob Marley. And then when they start the song, I don't know if it's the introduction or something about it. It just feels looser, a little bit freer, maybe a little bit jazzier. It just has a better vibe to it. I don't think it's still the greatest song, but I do think this live version incredibly improves on the studio version. And then we get the last of the latter songs. Other than Roundabout, I think the five latter songs are the five least interesting things on this album. We have It Will Be a Good Day, The River, and I don't know, it kind of works for me. It just a little more energy to it. We get almost this sort of like cathartic guitar solo at the end. It just another song that, like, I think my favorite song on the ladder might be the opening track, which is Homeworld, the ladder, which here I think is not as good, this version, as the studio version. But I do like It Will Be a Good Day. There's something a little more, it just kind of works. The energy works, the vibe works. It translates a little better live. I don't think it makes it a spectacular song, but it makes it better. In the actual show, as far as the setlet goes, I did throw a picture of that up earlier on there, but these songs are all like, you get Homeworld is the third song, then you get a Perpetual Change, and you get back-to-back ladder songs, and then you get a couple more, you get a Ritual and an And You and I short ritual. Then you get two more ladder songs back-to-back. I don't know if Hearts or Close to the Edge dropped somewhere in between those, but the ladder songs I do think kind of way down like the middle portion of the show, just because they're not really transformed live. So then we get to the other stuff. We get an Awaken. I have it at number 9 because we get a lengthier sort of Wakeman introduction in the beginning where he's toying around with the keyboards before we get to like his like piano part and then on to the song. But when we get to like the heavy part, I don't think Howe's guitar or Sherwood's guitar, whoever's playing guitar on this, I'm assuming it's Howe, it's just not as evil. It's not as dark. It's not as menacing. Like that's what I like about Awaken, is you have that piano intro, which is a little like 70s synth dated at times, and some of the sounds that are used are very not my favorite thing. But as soon as we get to those guitar parts and that really weird proggy section, that's when things get really, really, really interesting, and it's menacing and it's dark. And this live version just doesn't quite have the menace that I want in it. And so yeah, it drops down to number 9. Still nice to hear a live Awaken. That's an awesome choice. But again, I don't think it's quite delivering sort of the evil vibes that studio version kind of delivers in that like first sort of proggy jam right after the vocals. Number 8 is Cinema, which other than having the fade in the beginning is pretty much a straight played Cinema. Nice to hear someone other than Rabin playing this song. And Chris Squire's bass, like, even though it's almost the exact same version as on 90125, Chris Squire's bass playing is ridiculous. Like, he's just like, I'm here, guys. I'm still the same sick bass player I ever was. Steve might not sound as evil because of whatever tone he's using or whatever, but I can bring it. And he brings it on the bass. The Cinema sounds fantastic. And Cinema is like one of the last songs of the set. It's just dropped after an I've Seen All Good People, and then it drops into An Owner of a Lonely Heart, which is yet to make this list, oddly enough. Number 7 is Your Move, I've Seen All Good People. And that's here because it doesn't have that silent break between Your Move and I've Seen All Good People. It's got the drum roll. Alan White brings us, just racing into I've Seen All Good People. And then we get a pretty standard I've Seen All Good People, which is, good, high energy, fun rock and roll song with the awesome Your Move to open. Then it's 6 and 5, Time and a Word at 6, Ritual at 5. We have 2 songs of which we only get a really, really, really tiny snippet of both. But I like the little, like, we can't play all these songs, so let's play snippets of them. I like when, like, Portugal the Man will do that and have these medleys of 4 or 5 songs where they just play a verse or two. Obviously, Genesis has done that with their, like, sort of big medleys that they do. Yes, did a medley of sorts back on, like, the 78, 79, 78 tour with, like, Long Distance Run Around and a bunch of other things. Time and a Word started off, and then they went into Long Distance Run Around. This, we only get like 58 seconds of Time and a Word, but I like it. I want to hear that melody. I like it. John gets to sing. I think it's just him and a keyboard, or I think it's him and a keyboard on this one, maybe a guitar. But then that's number 6, and then 5 is Ritual, which again is just a minute of Ritual. We don't get any more of that, but it's the the part where they sing the title track. I'm not going to mispronounce that word. Sorry. Nos sommes désolés, nos sommes désolés. It's that little section, and we just get like a minute of that, where like Anderson is just coming out and singing that melody and everybody cheers, but we don't get the entire song. So it's kind of neat. I don't know. I like it. If you can't play all like 20 plus minutes of Ritual, give me that neat little melody and let Anderson like sing. And then same thing with Time and a Word. So even though they're really short, I think they really add the right amount of flavor. It's like a little flavor bomb, a melodic flavor bomb right between songs. Time and a Word comes between the opener, Yours is No Disgrace, then we get a Time and a Word, then we go into Homeworld. That's a nice transition. I wish Homeworld just sounded a little better live because I like that opening trio. And then we get The Messenger, which is one of the better ladder songs. Then we get that little bit of Ritual. Then we go into And You and I on the CDs. So that's number 6 and 5. Number 4 is Perpetual Change. Pretty straightforward perpetual change. They get that middle sort of part really nice. That sounds good. Where they do that and then the other part comes in, and then they kind of battle. And then we come back into the, and so you are, whatever John Anderson sings. Get a little bit of an outro jam at the end. It's pretty nice. Nothing that's quite as epic as what we get on Yes Songs. Yes, songs. But it's really nice. It's good to hear. Perpetual Change, always a live favorite of mine. But it definitely doesn't compare to that original one. Then we get in You and I at number 3. It's the second half of this song again. The reason it kind of made a bump up the list on Yes Songs was because of the second half. This second half, it's kind of weird and funky and just has this really nice, almost like syncopated type rhythm that's going at that during like the teacher preacher part. And then when we get to the final swell at the end, it almost feels like they're playing somewhat with the volume dynamics of that a little bit and having a little more fun with that than maybe I'd heard on previous live versions. Not a drastic reworking of the song. And I think like, if you haven't heard the song enough, you might not notice it, but it's one of those songs, those little differences and those little tweaks really give that second half just this whole slightly funkier little vibe. And then really the two songs other than Roundabout, which are the most dramatically different, are Owner of a Lonely Heart and Yours is No Disgrace. Owner of a Lonely Heart, still has all the horrible, cheesy, the sound effects, the bad sounding drums, the weird, the stabs of keyboards, which I don't really like. But at the end of the song, we get that weird little coda that they had at the 84 that they used on the 9021 live tour, where Anderson is urging people. I think he's urging people to clap, or he's riffing on some motivational speaking, and there's a little solo at the end by Howe, and it's just kind of this set ending. I'm pretty sure this ended the main set. Yeah, a very obvious, manipulative, very cheesy, not very yes-sounding coda to Owner of a Lonely Heart, where you're just yeah, everybody, we're going to jam a little bit, and everybody sing and clap, and it's just kind of a little bit cheesy, but I don't know. It works. It's fun. It makes me want to listen to Owner of a Lonely Heart because I actually really, really like that ending, as cheesy as it is. It's pretty good. It's pretty entertaining. And then the highlight, the opening song. I mean, to say it's all downhill from there might be true, but Yours is No Disgrace. We don't get the awesome sort of jam that we get back in 72 that's on Yes Songs. But we do get that awesome break in the middle where Steve Howe gets to solo by himself, and then the drums come back in. Howe's solo is pretty good. It's nowhere near as crazy, as intense, or as any of the 72 ones, like on the Progeny box set. But it's still pretty interesting. Squire is playing this very hectic, almost muted bass line the entire time that just is it's pushing and pulling at the same time and just providing this sort of hectic rhythmic energy below Howe. And then when White comes in, it's just tears into it, and the jam kind of takes off for a while with Howe solo and even crazier before they go back into the song proper. So really, just for that Steve Howe moment in the middle with Squire and White doing absolutely fantastic things along with them, easily elevates Yours Is No Disgrace to the best track on here. And unfortunately, it's the first track on here. And the last track is the worst track on here. So I don't have a lot of motivation to listen to this album. I do think there is, I think, the first part of it might be a little stronger than the second part because you get Yours Is No Disgrace. You get that Good Time in a Word as the second song. Homeward the Ladder, which is not as good as Studio, but not a bad song. Then you get Perpetual Change. So it's got a good, strong start. How much you feel about the other Ladder songs may help you get through the rest of the set. But yeah, whatever. How do I feel about this album compared to other Yes albums that I have done live? I have it there at number 4. I think I would rather listen to that Whitefish that's on 90212 Live. I really like 90112 Live, 90219, 90125. The numbers confuse me. I like to Hold On. I like the changes on 90112 Live. So for me, this is the least interesting of the album so far. And did any of these songs make the top 10? Yes. Yours Is No Disgrace is now all the way up at number 6. I like Yours Is No Disgrace may take over this entire list, if to be honest with you, if they keep doing really interesting things with that and not doing as interesting things with other songs. But those right there are the top 10 songs that I have so far listened to as far as live shows go. So there we go. That's all I got, people. Those are my thoughts on Yes, House of Yes, live from the House of Blues in Las Vegas here in the States. Yeah, let me know what you think of this album. If you listen to this album, let me know what you think of those songs. I'm not the biggest fan of the Ladder, so I might be missing little nuances in those live versions that make it better than I'm recognizing. Let me know if you're a big Ladder fan and you have things you want to point out to me. I would appreciate that. But yeah, that's all I got in this. I'm excited. I'm kind of not excited because the next album on this list is Symphonic Live. And I'm not a big fan of, I listen to a lot of metal, and I'm not a big fan of like when metal bands play with symphonies. I have a friend of mine who comes to the Poetry Slam all the time who loves when metal bands play with symphony, and I don't. But I did look at the set list, and there is a 28-minute Ritual on there. So I am excited to see what they do with the Ritual with a symphony. So, but anyways, haven't listened to it yet. But in the next week or so, I'll have my thoughts on that. Thanks for watching. Went longer than I thought it would. But anyways, peace. Talk to you. Oh, subscribe, like, share, comment. And just go listen to Yours Is No Disgrace. It's the best thing on this album. And then if you want, and then stick around for Time and a Word. It's only 58 seconds long. All right. And then listen to the rest of it. Just cuz. All right. That's all I got. Peace. Talk to you later.